1980, a friend of mine did something of rare importance that some historians might miss. Dr. Milton Friedman, a scientist, a careful thinker, and a great teacher, first presented his TV series, Free to Choose. His TV series was about choices, risks, freedom, equality, and making a better future for all of us. In 1976, the 200th birthday of our nation, Milton Friedman won the Nobel Prize, Peace Prize, in economics. 200 years earlier, in the same year as the Declaration of Independence, Adam Smith, the Scotsman, published a book titled The Wealth of Nations. The United States was the first country to apply the ideas in Adam Smith's book. Those ideas have led to our prosperity and given us our freedom. In Free to Choose, Milton Friedman shows us how those ideas can help us today. In this program, Milton and his wife Rose take us on a brief tour of Eastern Europe. They wanted to see if the Czechs, Hungarians, and Poles were taking the steps needed to achieve prosperity and a lasting freedom. In fact, a member of the Polish Parliament has said that Milton Friedman's Free to Choose was a major influence on the Polish drive for freedom. I find it exciting to watch the rebirth of freedom in Eastern Europe. Being free to choose should be every person's birthright. Everywhere in the world, and especially here in the United States, we need to keep government on the sidelines. Let the people develop their own skills, solve their own problems, better their own lives. I don't think it's an exaggeration to call Milton Friedman's Free to Choose a survival kit for you, for our nation, and for freedom.
Human and political freedom has never existed and cannot exist without a large measure of economic freedom.
Freedom is making choices. What's best for me? What do I want to do? We all want to be free to choose.
No government official is telling these people what to do.
Parental control, parents choosing the teacher, parents monitoring the schooling.
Free to live your own life, pursue your own goals, chase your own rainbow, without the government breathing down on your neck or standing on your shoes.
Most of us would choose prosperity if we could, but what's the best road to that goal?
Free trade set off a process that revolutionized Japan and the lives of its people.
The Pilgrims tried a form of socialism over 300 years ago. Unfortunately for their fair-minded plans, they prospered only after they were allowed to keep for themselves all the food they grew.
Who says economic institutions don't matter?
We may dream of a perfect world, but we all know that's not possible.
Hong Kong is very far from utopia. Life is unfair. There's nothing fair about one man being born blind and another man being born with sight. I do not know any exception to the proposition that if you compare like with like, the freer the system, the better off the ordinary poor people have been.
Dr. Friedman has spent a lifetime studying freedom and prosperity. To him, the lessons of history are clear. People are better off making their own choices, better off not relying on government. Free to Choose is a survival kit for you and for liberty.
Those are the Parliament buildings. This is the River Danube, and I am in Budapest, the capital of Hungary. Over there somewhere is Czechoslovakia, over there Poland, and farther away yet, the Soviet Union. Socialist states that started out with the very best of intentions, intending only to improve the lots of their citizens. They all ended up making the people poor, miserable, and into slaves. And every one of them has been learning that lesson, that socialism is a failure. They are all trying to move in the direction of a free, private market. What happened here in Eastern Europe was a major event. The first time in history that totalitarian countries decided to move toward free markets. Will they succeed? That is a question that brought my wife Rose and me here. As economists, We wanted to witness the most exciting experiment in political and economic organization that is likely to occur in our lifetime. In the center of Prague, there's a famous cafe, a relic from the days when Czechoslovakia was one of the wealthiest countries in the world. Today, we find only faded elegance, a pale echo of a productive past that was created by market incentives. What happened? Communist central control. That's what happened. The same culture, the same people, the same resources, but what a different outcome. A vastly lower standard of living, the result of substituting orders from the top for incentives from below. Who says economic institutions don't matter? A year ago, right outside that cafe, hundreds of thousands of Czechs massed in Wenceslas Square to demand their freedom. This is where it all happened. In 3 days, they got political freedom. The hopes were high. They thought economic miracles would follow quickly. Yet now it's a year later and almost nothing has happened. Political freedom can be achieved rapidly. Economic freedom and prosperity is a very different thing. And that's what's beginning to dawn on these people. In reality, they are not yet free. They are still the victims of thousands of controls the communists put in place. If the newly elected governments are going to keep the support of the people, they must give them real freedom, and they've got to do it fast. That was the secret of Margaret Thatcher's success in England. She had a well-worked-out program, and she put it into effect right after coming into office. It was the secret of Ronald Reagan's program. On the other hand, Menachem Begin in Israel came in without any plans whatsoever, and he ended up a failure. If Czechoslovakia is going to achieve the objectives of its revolution, it must move rapidly to put into effect the economic institutions which alone can convert political freedom into economic and human freedom. Those institutions are the institutions of free, private markets. There are examples all over the place of both the opportunities and the problems. Yuri Malik wants to publish a magazine for people who are trying to set up their own private businesses in Czechoslovakia. He runs it from his living room. It's a small family enterprise. The magazine is packed with information for would-be businessmen on how to thread their way through the jungle of bureaucratic regulations that still exist. The irony is that some of those very regulations are preventing him from getting his business off the ground. For a start, he needs to obtain 15 separate government licenses before he can distribute the magazine. After nearly a year, he still hasn't got them. He's had to come here again and again to this government licensing bureau to try to persuade a bureaucrat to allow him to do business.
Tak, bohužel zavřeno. Dobrý den, prosím vás, inženýra Polského hledala.
Yet again, it's not his lucky day.
A kdo by mi to mohl říct?
Tady v kanceláři.
Jo, děkuji, já se podívám. Promiňte, prosím.
Yuri Malik doesn't give in easily, but things are not looking too hopeful. The man he's got to see is not available, and no one else is interested in his problem. The Czech government owns all the newsstands, the bookshops, the nationwide distribution system, which is controlled from here. There's one way, and only one way, to put an end to all this nonsense. The government must get out of business and stay out. It must transfer these assets into private hands.